The eldest son's wife, Courtney, showed up late for Brian's burial and showed no regrets. Courtney hurried up to say hello and, "Hello, Jasmine," when she spotted my red, teary eyes. Siblings do not have inheritance rights, as you may be aware. I am sure that I will get his estate since I'm his mother, I said. Courtney smiled and for some reason showed me Brian's passbook and seal. "Sorry, but I've already used $70,000. "What? Why?" I cried out. "The reason for this is that his will, which I possess, specifies that his eldest daughter-in-law would inherit his property. The other day, when he was intoxicated, I asked him to sketch it up. I'll take your house and land because I never imagined he would die so soon after arriving." She laughed. I had no idea what to say since I was so horrified. I mean, come on, this funeral for Brian. And Courtney fucking has no common sense at all. Her remarks have overwhelmed and perplexed me. "For that reason, Mom, I'm sorry, but you have to get out of here quickly. I'm going to move in with Courtney. Now that you've restored it, it looks amazing. I'm thrilled," Daniel continued. I shuddered with rage at their words and demeanor. They spent carelessly and without emotion, even after losing a family member. I find myself wondering about their humanity. It was then that I recalled something crucial. I was delighted as I saw Daniel and Courtney go, feeling victorious. Even if they come to me for assistance later, I will completely disregard them, so I hope they have happy and lovely dreams. I'm Jasmine and I'm 82 years old. After high school, I worked as a housewife and met my husband, a primary school teacher, through a mutual acquaintance. I was drawn to his personality, and we quickly began dating before getting hitched. My spouse was as industrious as he seemed, with his black-rimmed glasses on all the time. He would regularly go to the homes of missing students, listen to them, and give extra instruction to those who needed it in the classroom. He resembled someone from a television show in his extreme dedication as a teacher. While I worked at the printing firm, I provided for him and reared our 2 boys. I'm pleased with my children's maturity since they managed my husband's burial and other plans well when he went away from sickness. After graduating from college, my oldest son Daniel was able to find employment at a big firm, while my younger son Brian looked up to his father and decided to become a popular teacher. Brian used to passionately tell stories about his school days when he returned home. Even when they got closer to 40, neither of them expressed interest in getting married since they were both so committed to their careers. Daniel unexpectedly contacted me one day and said, "I'll bring my fiancée this weekend. I'd like to introduce her." I could not have been happier and could not wait to meet her. But when the weekend came, I was taken aback by Daniel's fiancée. Despite coming to see us to get married, she looked cold and uninteresting, without any cosmetics or accessories. Even if she was more attractive than others, her calmly colored clothes and long black hair were out of style for her. She maintained the same smile on her face and spoke so softly that I could hardly hear her greetings. She left such a negative effect on me that I was afraid she would turn Daniel's life into a funeral. But given his age and the likelihood that he may not get another shot at marriage, it felt harsh to disagree with Daniel's choice of her. I gave it some thought and ultimately chose to accept their marriage. Fearing that I would live alone, Daniel and Courtney relocated to a new home in the same city and paid frequent visits to me. Courtney gradually warmed up to me and grinned more every time we spoke. She eventually became at ease enough to prepare meals in my kitchen. She cooked a range of restaurant-quality dishes, including Chinese, Japanese, and Western. She held a culinary license. Courtney gave me a shy grin when I complimented her food and said she should start a restaurant. She was plain-looking, but when she smiled, it was charming, and Daniel gave her a kind glance. Since Daniel and Courtney appeared to get along well, I believed I could also have a positive connection with them. We had developed a nice connection, so even though her hair occasionally went into the dishes, I pretended not to notice. But my hopes were not elevated for long. On Mother's Day, my birthday, and other special events like midsummer and year-end presents, Courtney would frequently send me her famous baked treats. It made me happy to have a daughter-in-law who was so considerate. I detected a strange flavor one day while I was drinking tea with the candies she gave me. Perplexed, I looked up the Best By date only to discover it had passed more than a year ago. I phoned Courtney, shocked, to find out where she purchased them. She simply chuckled and apologized. "I sent you the older ones by mistake because I also purchased candies from that store for myself. Next time, I'll try to be cautious." She hadn't mailed them right away after purchasing them at the department shop. "What if something happens to you?" I cautioned her. "Take caution." But the next time, nothing was different. I didn't mind if the candies were a few days past their expiration date if they were for me alone, but I didn't think it was right to give them as gifts to other people. After other such events, I got in touch with Courtney again, and this time, Daniel snatched her phone and said, "Mom, don't be hard on Courtney. She thoughtfully sends them on your behalf. We would cut off our family's relationship with you if you were to ignore her sentiments." Well, I see now. I apologize. Daniel said something that surprised me, so I apologized. Gifts that had expired started to arrive after that, and I tossed them away as soon as they did. Daniel and Courtney finally stopped coming to my house completely and began to complain that they were busy at work. Daniel and Courtney had not desired children since their marriage, and Courtney was employed as a chef full-time. My other son, Brian, lived alone and we stayed in touch, but he was a busy teacher and only visited during the summer and New Year's holidays. I didn't worry too much since I was too busy getting up with friends and discovering new interests like internet handcrafting, so I assumed they were doing okay. For the first time in a long time, Daniel contacted me one day and said, "I'll come home because I have good news." I had to give Daniel a second look when I met them at the door because I believed he could have been promoted. "What? Are you Daniel, please? What's wrong with your clothes?" Perplexed, I inquired. "Hey, Mom, that's nice, huh? You know, I've changed," he answered. He was decked up in a gaudy sweater, large black shades, and patterned pants. Daniel, who had always had short black hair, got the most unexpected long pink hair. "Look at the price of this clothing, Mom. $2,500 bought this sweater, and $5,000 bought these jeans. Luxury brands are my style." He bragged, "They're the best." "What? Half of your pay is that flashy knit." "Not at all. What's up with that hair, too? Why does a 40-year-old guy dress like a pop star?" He wore giant rings on his fingers and had piercings on his lips, eyebrows, and ears, which I hadn't seen at first since I was so agitated. "Is that appropriate attire for work? Is it permitted? Are you not the head of a department, Daniel?" Worried, I asked, "Oh, I should have told you. We've given up our employment," Daniel said breezily. "Courtney told me about this great money-making proposal, so I used my retirement payments to buy her a Porsche," he said, laughing. "We promise to never work again and to live life to the fullest from now on. Mom, if you'd like to know more, I can tell you." I didn't even get a chance to listen to Daniel before I hurried out the door. There was a bright red Porsche in my house's parking lot, looking entirely out of place in the countryside. My mouth fell when the woman got out of the automobile, the sparkling symbol securely fixed. "Who might you be?" Surprised, I asked. The speaker said, "Oh my gosh, Jasmine, don't tell me you've forgotten me." Without a doubt, it was Courtney, but she had altered so drastically that I had to question whether she had assumed a different identity. Her long black hair was permed and blonde today, having earlier been tied back. She used to dress in jeans and baggy sweatshirts, but now she was wearing a blue mini dress with a deep V at the neck. Her face had changed from being drowsy and makeup-free to having bigger eyes, a more sophisticated appearance, and bright pink lipstick. She appeared far younger than 50 thanks to her radiant skin. "It's not only cosmetics, is it? Have you had any cosmetic surgery?" I inquired. Courtney wriggled her body toward me and grinned sensually. She smiled and cocked her head slightly. Daniel fulfills all of my requests since he is incredibly devoted to me. He attempts to emulate someone I praise. He even retired when I brought up a proposition that would make money. Furthermore, he allowed me to spend my retirement money any way I pleased, even on a Porsche and cosmetic surgery when I asked for it. Your son, Brian, took me to Italian cuisine at a fancy eating establishment the other day. It looks like he has a substantial amount of money stored up, and he is also quite giving. So far, I've underestimated him, but I ought to get to know him better. When I gave Courtney a harsh look, she smirked eerily, entwined her hand with Daniel's arm, and went back to the car. Daniel grinned and said, "Mom, I'll let you go on an overseas trip when we make a profit." She had pulled down the vehicle window. Such a thing is unnecessary for me. Please do your best, honestly. Distressed, I answered, "You mustn't believe that woman's sweet talk." "I am aware. Please consider the nation you wish to visit." Daniel spoke, and the Porsche's engine roared as they drove away. I was nervous when I said farewell. Unknown causes kept the awful things coming. Brian's disease took his life 2 months after he saw Daniel and Courtney, who had undergone a significant transformation. When the landlord entered the room, he discovered Brian dead and was suspicious of the overflowing mail. I rushed home after getting a call from the landlord. Brian appeared to be asleep, despite having a pale face. His face was composed, as he appeared to have died quietly in his sleep. "This is a lie, isn't it, Brian? Is it not a lie?" "Open your eyes, Brian," I sobbed, holding on to Brian's icy body while ignoring the looks of the other people. Although I was aware that Brian was heading to the hospital, I had heard that his symptoms had lately stabilized. I never imagined things would get worse so quickly. For him to die before his parents, before me, would be too harsh. Brian was just 45 years old. Just as I started crying in front of Brian's remains, Daniel and Courtney, who I had reached out to, showed up. Daniel gave Brian a harsh look and stood looking a bit surprised for a long time. Courtney seemed astonished also for a moment, but then she smiled meaningfully from the corner of her lips. I became enraged at this foolish individual, and while I was giving her a hard time, Courtney grabbed Daniel's arm. "Enough, Daniel. Come on, let's go." "Yeah," Daniel said, pulling his arm as he went. Luckily, it was the chilly winter months, thus Brian's body was preserved. Soon after, Brian's remains were returned to us since it didn't seem like a criminal case. I made every effort to contact Daniel to ask him to lead the mourning, but I was unable to do so. Brian's cousin, who was close to him, took care of all the arrangements, contacting the funeral home, temple, and relatives while I was a shell of my former self. Before the wake started, I tried to reach Courtney once again, but this time I was unable to get through, even though they ought to have known I was going to be calling. When the funeral morning finally arrived, I was disappointed by Brian's abrupt death. It was upsetting not just for me and our family members, but also for the kids in his class, his old classmates, and other school personnel who showed up one by one for Brian's burial. I had learned about Brian's financial circumstances from Brian's cousin before the burial. I observed the mourners giving incense, my emotions whirling from the image I was looking at and the words his cousin was speaking to me. The entire space reeked of grief, and sobs could be heard everywhere. Following the burial, I sincerely thanked everyone who attended the service and stood outside the hall telling anecdotes about Brian as I waited for the casket to leave. Then the door opened and Courtney and Daniel entered. Even though it was a funeral, Courtney looked stunning in a black fur coat and a deep-necked dress, and Daniel trailed closely after her in a brightly colored shirt and pink hair. "Oh, has the offering of incense already ended? Oh, that's unfortunate," she remarked without expressing regret. Courtney came running up to me, my eyes puffy and red from sobbing. "Jasmine, did you know that siblings have no right to inherit?" "Yes, I am aware of it," I answered. "As his mom, I will receive my son Brian's wealth." Courtney gave me a strange smile and handed me Brian's seal and passbook. "Sorry, but I've already used $100,000. "Huh? Why?" "Because I had him create a will naming his eldest daughter-in-law as the beneficiary of his property. Actually, the other day when he was intoxicated, I asked him to sketch it up. Whoa, I had no idea he would die so quickly after finishing it. Therefore, I'll take your land and house." I was unable to express my disbelief. After all, this was Brian's funeral. She definitely lacked common sense, and no matter how I looked at it, I felt overwhelmed. I wondered, what in the world is she saying? "You must thus leave the house as soon as possible, Mom. I'm going to move in with Courtney. Now that you've restored it, it looks amazing. I'm thrilled." Of course, after my husband died, the home had been put into Brian's name. Brian, therefore, had the option to sell it immediately if he had so desired. But my rage flared up at Courtney's big smile. Despite Brian's death during the funeral, she was talking about inheritance with a grin on her face, and even more so, utilizing it at will right afterward. I had my doubts about her character, and what in the world was Daniel doing? He let Courtney utilize his brother's fortune as she wanted, and arrived late for his brother's funeral. But then I remembered what my cousin had told me earlier regarding Brian's financial predicament. I asked Courtney, "You guys have taken all of Brian's inheritance, right?" while holding back my need to scream. "Yes, that is what I am expressing. You will not receive any money at all, mother-in-law, as we will receive all insurance proceeds and savings." "Okay, give me a few weeks. I need time to make plans and find a new place to reside." "Definitely," Courtney said. "Yeah, the best spot close to the station is mine," wildly swaying as she ignored the icily directed looks from the family members. "Auntie, are you sure about this?" "It's fine, but instead, I'll cut off ties with them as parent and child." "Really?" Of course, everyone started making noise. As Daniel and Courtney triumphantly returned home, leaving behind a shocked family, I couldn't help but gaze at them. "Enjoy your happy dreams and present happiness. Even if they scream and come to me later for assistance, I will completely disregard them." I started looking for a care home as soon as the funeral was done, and I got home. Considering my age, I'm still in good health, but I have no idea what the future holds. If given the option, I believed it would be good to have a self-sufficient facility where I could get medical attention if something went wrong or my health deteriorated. I came upon one facility while doing an internet search. It was a component of a hotel that had a hot spring and was perched on a hill overlooking the ocean. Thankfully, there was still space available, so I headed right over to have a look. The view was even better than in the online pictures, and the building was clean. Above all, the staff were gentle and friendly. I liked it, so I decided on the spot and moved in right away after packing up at home. As time went by, I was gradually recovering from the loss of Brian. One day, my cell phone rang while I was planting tomato seedlings in a home garden on the rooftop. I removed my gloves and looked at the phone. As expected, it was Daniel. I was expecting him to call, so I was not surprised, but a scream-like voice echoed in my ear. "Mom, please help me." "No, I've already cut ties with you, so you're not my son." Avoid saying that. Assist me. I never imagined that this would occur. I was forced to give him my address, even though I didn't want to. I provided them with the facility's address and invited them to come talk to me personally. 2 hours later, Daniel and his partner showed up. Both of them were breathing rapidly and panting, suggesting that they were in a huge hurry. After showing them the way to the guest room and changing the sign to "In Use," I shut the door. They stood looking downcast at me as I motioned for them to sit on the sofa. Despite being aware of the circumstances, I purposefully responded, "Aren't you living elegantly? After all, you've stolen all of Brian's fortune." "We could never possibly be living in style. Brian owed money up to his neck." Daniel started to cry out. Courtney also began to yell in a high-pitched voice that rang in my ears, saying, "There was no indication of this at all since he was successful. He was drowning in credit card debt, though. Even if we pay with the deposit and the house's land serves as collateral, there would still be a debt of over $100,000, wouldn't there?" "That appears to be the case. Before he passed away, Brian was discussing this with his cousin," I remarked with ease, to Courtney's exasperated scowl. "Why are debt levels so high? Brian, you didn't invest or gamble, did he?" "The reason for the debt was helping others." "Pardon me? Assisting other people?" "Brian was a generous man who donated $1,000 to kids who needed financial assistance. He was ready to take on the debt because he could make money on his own. A deposit was reserved for these kinds of students. Brian also had a conceited side. He indulged occasionally since he didn't want to show people how difficult life might be. He was conscious of his stress levels as an educator. That's how the debt kept mounting." "What is Brian, an idiot?" Daniel fell back onto the couch, covering his face with his hands in shock. "I never thought that would be the cause," he whispered in a low voice. "But he was very much like Dad in personality. To be honest, I was glad that Brain accepted the debts and assets as a gift before passing away. If not, I would unavoidably have to assume responsibility for the loan. I will lose all I have saved if I pay back the debt. There are challenges in living solely on a pension. I've come to terms with it." "What? You forced it on us even though you knew all along?" Courtney slammed down on the couch and began to scream and bang on the table. I gave her a serene, unperturbed face. "Within 3 months following his passing, you had the option to reject the inheritance. Had any of you expressed regret, I could have been persuaded to tell me what you know. Your kid was hopelessly in debt, yet here you are enjoying an opulent lifestyle in a facility by the sea. Do you not feel guilty?" "How intriguing," she said in a tone that matched mine. "I was just about to say the same thing to you." With a kind grin, I removed a picture from my pocket and held it in front of them. Courtney had been making a scene even though she was in a care facility, but she stopped when she saw the picture. Daniel froze as he leaned forward to get a better look. "What's going on, Courtney? You were secretly observing Brian." In the picture, Courtney was flirting with Brian as her arm was around his waist. They were going to check into a hotel when the candid photo was snapped. Courtney's complexion becomes white. "You were cheating with Brian?" With frightened eyes darting all over, Courtney started babbling excuses. Daniel struggled to grasp the fact as he looked at her in shock. "No, it's not what it looks like. I was drunk." I then displayed a second picture of Courtney and Brian, this one taken inside a red Porsche, showing them being intimate and loving. I arranged 4 additional pictures in front of Daniel. He stared at them, speechless and in shock. Courtney was still stuttering as I went on. "I learned about it from a private detective. It seems like you and Brian have been together for a long time. If you want additional proof, it is abundant. Should I remove it?" "It's over," Daniel muttered to Courtney as he slowly glanced up. "Let's file for divorce." "I'm okay with that," Courtney retorted with defiance. "You have provided me with everything I need. This is all for me. I will no longer be taking on your issues. I'll sell the Porsche and, if needed, pay for any damages because I don't need it any longer. Is that not sufficient?" I answered, "No, that's not it. Your true identity has already been exposed." Daniel's expression became sour. "Courtney, is there something you're still hiding?" I cast a glance at Courtney, who was seated in front of me. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and her face, young from cosmetics and plastic surgery, went pallid. I told Daniel, This woman is a professional scammer, after allowing her adequate time to process the information. She takes advantage of her boyfriend's money and goes on to the next. Is that correct? Courtney attempted to defend herself, clearly scared. I have no idea what you're discussing. They simply offered me money voluntarily. I did nothing improper. Why don't you speak to them directly about that? I answered, but I'm not sure if their attorneys would believe you. Did you tell them where I was, Jasmine? Yes, within 6 months they were able to identify your victims owing to the hard work of the outstanding private investigators. I am appreciative. Courtney gave me a threatening gaze. The investigators' findings stated that among Courtney's victims were notable individuals such as second-generation CEOs and politicians' sons. It was difficult to find her because they were afraid of being seen by the media and were reluctant to take action. It was about time Courtney faced some repercussions with the aged Daniel, especially considering my husband's substantial property holdings. There was a tense stillness before Daniel slowly got to his feet, his rage hardly restrained. He gave off the impression of attacking Courtney, but instead he gritted his teeth and growled. I had faith in you, Courtney. I adored you despite your enigmatic history. But to believe that this was who you were, not in a manner. You are to blame for falling for a trick. My plans have been derailed. The landowner's eldest son and I were meant to spend the rest of our lives together, but because of you, everything is in disarray. What are you going to do about it? Courtney insisted. I let out a loud chuckle. I send my sympathies. Just so you know, you ought to part with the home you share with Daniel as well as the secret location where you conducted your activities. Each is capable of seizures. With obvious anxiety, Courtney said, Oh no, this is the worst. I hope you succeed in paying off the debt, I added with a big smile. We won't be seeing each other again. I felt a sense of closure as I saw Courtney rush out in rage. After settling everything, I made the decision to return to my room. But then I heard Daniel scream out to me. I really apologize for everything, Mom. I'm sorry for the way I treated you. Daniel got up from the couch and made a deep bow. Mom, I really apologize. I swear I'm going to divorce that woman. I want you to return home so that our family may begin anew. I cast a detached glance at Daniel, unaffected by his sincere apologies. Are you asking me to come back so I can help with the debt? Daniel appeared to be saying just that, judging by his smile. No way, was my emphatic response. Our parent-child connection is already over. Keep me off your contact list. I also won't be seeing you. Aren't you being too strict, Mom? We're related, Daniel begged. Daniel tried to hang on to me, but I shrugged it off. Daniel, Courtney has tricked both you and Brian. Even an apology at your age won't be able to reverse the fortune you contributed to Brian's funeral, and your disregard for it. Take care of the debt on your own and consider what you did. Please, Mom. Disregarding his entreaty, I departed from Daniel and returned to my chamber. Family members claim that as Courtney went back to retrieve her belongings, the victims were waiting outside and captured her. Courtney was depressed about having to repay debt for the rest of her life because of the significant sum that was repaid and connected to Brian's passing. In order to pay off her obligations, she now works during the day as a contract employee and works nights and weekends at a cabaret club. Daniel kept contacting me and pleading for assistance with the bill, but I immediately blocked him. In order to pay off Brian's debts, Daniel, who had quit his job at Courtney's request, now works at a municipal maintenance plant and takes on part-time employment at eateries and convenience stores. For my part, I'm living a quiet, independent life in a senior living community that is attached to a hotel. Despite its small size, my room offers a lovely view of the sea through a huge window that faces the living area. I read books, watch movies, do yoga, knit, and do patchwork in my free time. In the rooftop garden, I also cultivate fruits and vegetables, which keeps me quite busy. We enjoy delicious seafood while catching up, and when friends come to town, they stay in the next hotel. I enjoy living this lifestyle and am appreciative of my health and freedom to live without burdening others. I want to live out the rest of my days in this manner.